It was a case that captured worldwide attention 20 years ago, and now Adnan Syed, the man made famous by the podcast Serial, is back in the spotlight.
In the interest of fairness and justice, that he's entitled to a new trial.
Hey guys, welcome back to True Crime with Shannon, where I cover missing persons, unsolved cases, crime news, and more. Before we get into today's topic of the upcoming court case tomorrow of Adnan Syed, I always like to feature a missing person on the channel. So let me pull up today's missing person. Today's missing person is from Phoenix, Arizona. This is Michelle L. Rose Bernstein-Schultz. She is 36 years old. Date of birth is 9/4 of 1985. She weighs 170 pounds, gray hazel eyes. Hair color is black with short hair, and she's 5'6". Michelle was last seen on Wednesday, June 29th in the area of 40th Street and Greenway Road in Phoenix, Arizona. She may be wearing gray sandals with fluorescent green accents and a black mask. Her family has not heard from her, is worried, and asking the public for help in finding her. Anyone with information as to her whereabouts is asked to contact the Phoenix Police Missing and Unidentified Persons Unit. It looks like you can call 911, of course. The phone number for the Phoenix Police Missing and Unidentified Persons Unit is 602-534-2121, and it looks like there's also an after hours number if you're calling at a later time of the day, 602-262-6141. Again, this is Michelle Ellie Rose Bernstein-Schultz, missing out of Phoenix, Arizona. She's a 36-year-old, and if you have any information that can bring her back to her family, please do contact the police department or call 911. I don't know how many of you followed the Serial podcast. I followed it when it was on its first season, and it was huge at the time. So if you were into true crime or true stories, a lot of folks did follow it. And it was a story of Adnan Syed, and he has been in jail, and he's actually getting a chance to possibly get released. So I'm going to give you guys a story a bit about him and the case, for those of you who are not as familiar with it. And then I guess tomorrow he will be on September 19th. Today is the 18th as I record this. He will be making an appearance in court. This is from the New York Times. The defendant, who was the subject of the 2014 podcast Serial, is serving life in prison, maintains his innocence, and has fought for his release. And for those that have not checked out the Serial podcast, I highly recommend it. I will put a link in the information of this video to the podcast. It is one of my favorite podcasts. Adnan Syed, the subject of the popular Serial podcast in 2014, has been in prison since he was charged with the murder of his ex-girlfriend in 1999 and has undergone a long legal battle for freedom while claiming his innocence. This week, prosecutors asked a judge to overturn his conviction, saying the state no longer has the confidence in the integrity of the conviction after a new investigation. The move was the latest step in a flurry of legal activity since the podcast questioned his conviction. Here is a brief timeline of his case. So I wanted to go through the timeline so that way everyone can be up to date on this, and we can follow this tomorrow and see what happens. 1999, Hae Min Lee is killed. Hae Min Lee, 18, was killed by strangulation when she was a student at Woodlawn High School in Baltimore County, Maryland. She disappeared after leaving the school, and her body was found nearly a month later, buried in a park. A police investigation led to Mr. Syed, a fellow student who had dated Miss Lee. He was arrested and pleaded not guilty. Yet he has always proclaimed his innocence. 2000. Adnan Syed is found guilty. Prosecutors relied heavily on the testimony by Jay Wilds, a friend of Mr. Syed's, who testified that he had helped Mr. Syed bury her body. They presented cell phone tower records that they said placed Mr. Syed near the park where Miss Lee's body was found. A jury found Mr. Syed, who was 17 at the time of Mrs. Lee's death, guilty of murder, robbery, kidnapping, and false imprisonment. He was sentenced to life in prison. So he has been in jail since his 2000 conviction. 2014, Serial podcast uncovers new evidence. 14 years later, the Serial podcast raised doubts about the facts around the case. In 2020, the New York Times company bought Serial Productions, the company behind the podcast. So it does look like, I was not aware of that, they actually own Serial Productions. Over the course of 12 weekly episodes, the podcast revealed the existence of an alibi witness for Mr. Syed, who said she was with him at a library when Miss Lee was killed. The witness, Asia McLean, said she had been willing to testify, but Mr. Syed's lawyer, Maria Cristina Gutierrez, did not contact her. Ms. Gutierrez was disbarred in 2001 after a series of client complaints emerged. The series also questioned the credibility of the cell phone tower data records and revealed the physical evidence gathered in 1999 was never tested for Mr. Syed's DNA. The podcast was downloaded more than 100 million times in its first year, bringing widespread public attention to the case. It won a Peabody Award for its compelling, thrilling account of how guilt, truth, and reality are decided. 2015, Mr. Syed gets a new hearing. In February 2015, a Maryland court agreed to hear an appeal from Mr. Syed. In November, a judge granted him a new hearing that would allow the introduction of the new evidence. 2016, a judge grants a new trial. In the hearings, Mr. Syed's defense team argued that his original defense had been grossly negligent and presented the testimony of the alibi witness. The team also questioned why the original lawyer had not questioned the reliability of the cell phone tower records. A judge in Maryland granted a new trial in June, and the state appealed the ruling. Mrs. Lee's family expressed pain and outrage at the decision to grant a new trial, saying they continue to believe justice was done when Mr. Syed was convicted of killing Hae. Lawyers asked for him to be released on bail. The motion was denied. 2018, Mr. Syed wins another appeal. The Maryland Court of Special Appeals upheld the decision to grant Mr. Syed a new trial and vacated his conviction, agreeing that he had received ineffective legal counsel. He remained incarcerated. And there's a photo of him with his girlfriend, Hae Min Lee, at their junior prom. 2019, Maryland's highest court denies the new trial. Reversing the decision from 2018, Maryland's highest court, the Court of Appeals, ruled in a 4-3 decision that while the original defense lawyer had been deficient, Mr. Syed was not prejudiced by that deficiency. It denied him a new trial and reinstated his conviction. So as you can see, it's been an ongoing battle for him. In November, the United States Supreme Court declined to hear his case. A 4-part HBO documentary beginning in March, The Case Against Adnan Syed, revealed that DNA tests performed at the request of Mr. Syed's new lawyers did not find anyone else's DNA on Mrs. Lee's body or belongings. 2022, a request to overturn the conviction. In March, prosecutors agreed to new DNA testing, saying that it was merited because of advances in genetic profiling. A new Maryland law allowed prosecutors the discretion to modify sentences of offenders who were under 18 at the time of their crimes and had served at least 20 years in prison. On September 14th, prosecutors asked a judge to overturn Mr. Syed's conviction. They said an investigation had uncovered the potential involvement of 2 alternate suspects, key evidence that prosecutors might have failed to provide to Mr. Syed's lawyers, and significant reliability issues regarding the most critical pieces of evidence presented at trial. They asked that he be granted a new trial at a minimum and be released on his own personal recognizance. After a nearly year-long investigation reviewing the facts of this case, Syed deserves a new trial where he is adequately represented and the latest evidence can be presented, Marilyn J. Mosby, the state attorney for Baltimore City, said in a statement. A hearing date has not yet been scheduled. Mr. Syed is now 41 years old. Okay, to update that, we have a hearing tomorrow. Let me pull that up. And this is the NPR article that we just posted yesterday, September 17th, regarding the trial that's going to be done tomorrow, the appearance in court rather. A judge on Monday will consider whether to vacate Adnan Syed's murder conviction. And let's just sift through this a bit here. Okay, Baltimore, a court hearing has been set for Monday. That's going to be September 19th in Baltimore to consider a request from prosecutors to vacate the 2000 murder conviction of Adnan Syed, whose case was chronicled in the hit podcast Serial. Baltimore Circuit Judge Melissa Finn scheduled the hearing for a 2 p.m. Court appearance, the Baltimore Sun reported. The development comes after Baltimore prosecutors filed a motion Wednesday saying a lengthy investigation conducted with the defense had uncovered new evidence that could undermine the conviction of Syed. Okay, so again, he's going to have a trial tomorrow, or as you watch this, it may be today. So it's going to be at 2 p.m., and this is going to be a big trial. I'm going to be covering it. I will do a post on my community tab, as well as throughout, and be following it on Twitter. So definitely keep an eye on that if you would like to follow this case. But that's pretty much the update. So it looks like he's going to get and finally get some opportunities here. I really believe that his guilt is highly unlikely. I mean, after hearing the Serial podcast and seeing what evidence has been presented, there's definitely a big question of his guilt. I've always, felt bad for the guy, and he spent, most of his life in jail at this point. So I really hope he can get out and hopefully try to have some kind of a life at this point, And I do feel bad for Lee's family. Obviously, someone killed their daughter, and it looks like they're going to have to reopen that case and see who did it, unless that DNA they just tested, the genetic DNA, may have some answers. That would be wonderful as well. So what do you guys think? Do you think that Adnan Syed will finally get to enjoy his life as a free man? Or do you think this is going to be forever marred, his reputation? And do you think that they're not going to, vacate this charge and he's going to continue to have to fight this? And that's going to be it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day, and stay safe.